Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the December 2nd edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin Dowe, and as usual, I express my thanks for you joining us this evening, whether you're at home, in one of the bars, driving home, looking at GBN television, listening on GBN radio, or joining us via any of our social media platforms. Thank you so very much for sharing your Monday evening with us. This evening, we're going to delve into the state of party politics and Grenada's political climate. And I have three learned gentlemen who are with us to share their insights and to help edify, elucidate this particular theme. I would ask them to introduce themselves and to tell you the role within which they sit this evening. I'll begin with my online guest, a name and face that you're very familiar with. Good evening to you and welcome again to Beyond the Headlines.
Good evening, Colin, and also good evening to the Grenadian people. It's good to be with you guys again on another evening program of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Peter Wickham. I'm a political consultant and Principal Director of Caribbean Development Research Services. I've been fortunate to have covered several elections in Grenada, and I look forward to continuing to be very interested in your politics. So I look forward to an interesting conversation tonight.
Excellent. And thank you for your continued interest in our politics and your contributions, Peter. I now come in-house and I'll let what I believe might be the younger of the two gentlemen to go first.
You've always been right. Good evening and thank you. And good evening, Peter. It's good to see you again. Cheers, good evening. William Joseph. It's happy state of my life now, you know. I sleep very long hours.
Good.
And then I get a little mischievous when I think about the politics. So these days I spend some time as some sort of political commentator. And that is the role I might play here this evening.
Wonderful.
Thank
so
you.
We have a well-rested, mischievous William Joseph with us this evening.
Well, let me say first of all, Colin, thanks for the invitation to be on your program. It's always stimulating, and it's always good at our stage in life to find a place where you can contest with respect and dignity political, ideological, philosophical, and other ideas. And your program allows for that to happen. And my best regards, of course, to Peter, who is well distinguished in the region for his ability to analyze and do projections and so on, and to comment generally on the politics. And let me say, I am here simply as John Citizen. I don't represent any political party or organization. Although I'm a member of a political party, I support a political party, but I'm not on this program representing the views of the political party that I support. I'm simply here as Chester Humphrey, citizen.
Okay, and I think that can be the claim for all of our guests, because for you viewers and listeners, has been deliberate. We want to have a discussion and delve into the issues with no one carrying any baggage, and I'll deliberately use the term baggage of political association. So the views expressed will be that of our guests. But just before we start off, it's always important to me to have our viewers and listeners get an understanding and basis of the historical realities. So if you can share a little bit just on some historical perspectives of the growth and the development of political parties in Grenada.
Well, I'll be very brief because I did not spend time actually researching the issues, and I think I needed to know that. And I think, that has a lot to do with the inadequate brief that I had on what we would discuss. Had I known, I would have come with much more detail that I think would be of educational interest to the population. So you have to forgive me if I fall short, and I anticipate I will be short. Significantly, there are basically two periods, distinctive periods in Grenada's history in the life of the political party. pre-1951 agro-proletarian revolution, in which political power was wielded by the plantocracy and the merchant class. They were the ones who enjoyed maximum democracy. The vast majority of the population of children of former slaves tied within a plantation economy, and we know what that was, had no democratic rights or limited democratic rights and limited civil rights. We were just 2 or 3 notches up from chattel animals, and it was not until the 1951 revolution that significant socio-economic, political, and democratic changes took place. And therefore, I would not at this time detail all the political parties, because there are many of them with names, some of them I can't remember. But I think the significant ones that we can talk about and mention and comes to mind without having to do any research is the Grenada United Labour Party, which grew out of the mass movement of the working class, right, and the urban poor, right, the GULP. And that's the 1951, after the trade union struggle begun, and it created the space, the democratic space, and the introduction of universal adult suffrage and so on. And then you had the Grenada National Party, which was essentially the party of the plantocracy and the merchants. Although not led exclusively by them, but by elements from the middle strata of society, it was essentially a party that had its financial base and its financial oxygen and its ideological and philosophical outlook fueled by the dominant class, which was on decline during that period. In and between that time, we had Derek Knight when he returned. I'm trying to remember, gosh, Derek's party came on being, and it sort of fought a variation to the Gary's GULP, and then subsequently Derek and Gary merged. Right. I think it was called the Grenada Action Movement, I think it was. Then at one point, and then the other significant party is the New Jewel Movement, right? And then the National Democratic Congress, and then you had, after the New Jewel Movement, you had the New National Party, and we know how that emerged. It emerged under the dictates of the American interventionism that created it as an extension of American interventionist rule within this hemisphere, of course, all under the broad ambit of the so-called Monroe Doctrine. That party was formed, and then subsequently it split, and then it split again. It split first. You had a hiving off of the more social democratic elements, and that led to the formation of the NDC with George Brizan and Dr. Alexis and them being the preeminent movers there. And then the NNP split again into, well, one section retained the NNP on the democratic basis, on the democratic principles, and it retained the NNP, but it morphed or metamorphosized or zygoted, any combination of adjectives, into something called the TNP, which was then led by Blaze and his loyal surrogate Ben Jones. But that didn't last very long. It demised with the demise of the demise. And so these are the significant political parties from the period 1951, which is really the watershed moment in the political and social evolution of our country, the 1951 revolution. As I always point to, there are 4 high points in Grenada's history, right, of which the 1951 revolution was the 3rd high point. The first high point, of course, was the last resistance put up by our Aboriginal forefathers when they fought the French, right, to protect their land, and they were genocided, murdered mercilessly, and thrown over Leapers Hill. And then, of course, history was then turned on its head, and they claimed that the people jumped to their death. There's nothing further from the truth. And then the second high point was the Federalist Revolution of 1795. Then you had the Garist Revolution, the Agro-Proletarian Revolution of 1951, and then 1979. And then, of course, you had the invasion of Grenada, etc., etc.
Would you say that these political parties were grounded in political or social ideology by and large, or are they people-led and personality-led, and conflicts among individuals that resulted in parties as opposed to philosophical and ideological clashes and differences?
Every political party is based on whether it articulates it or not, is based on an interest of the various groups or classes that make up the particular society. And every political party has a philosophy, whether it advocates it or not, right? It is just the nature of the whole human engagement of politics, right? And politics has a lot to do about rights, it has a lot to do about privileges, it has a lot to do about division, it has a lot to do with how wealth is created and distributed and who gets what, right?
Let me just ask Willie, do you agree that every political party has an ideology or philosophy, and as Chester said, whether it articulates it or not? I struggle to see the non-articulation of a philosophy as a philosophy being present. In other words, if you can't see it, does it exist?
Yes, it might be deemed to exist in the sense that a philosophy might be attributable, given who the players are and what their interests are known to be. So I would say yes, find cuts here and there, but generally yes. If you take the New Deal movement, I mean, that was very, very clear. If you take the GNP, it was clear. If you take the NDC of today, it is not clear, I don't think. And the NNP used to be pretty clear. I'm not so sure it's very clear right now. So, there are variants of the thing, but I agree with the general thought.
How has socioeconomic...
I remind you that we have a political scientist here.
No.
So
and certainly would invite Peter to weigh in, because the question is whether or not, because it is a regional question. It's not just a Grenadian issue, I suspect. Well, Peter.
No, I was finding the conversation quite fascinating and listening with great interest. But Grenada is very different to the other Caribbean islands. As small as we are, Grenada is very different because your political development has been somewhat unusual, and certainly the initial part, in terms of the pre-1951 period, is probably similar. But after you pass the Geary era and you get into the revolution, the New Deal movement clearly had a very leftist outlook, which was significantly different to a lot of other Caribbean countries. Certainly a lot of us were left, but certainly not as left as them. The alliances that they would have formed with Cuba and so on in terms of Grenada's development took you in a different direction. And then the revolution, the coup, that was interrupted by the invasion, changed all of that, and then the rest is history. Currently, I would say that Grenada has particularly one political party, which is in two branches, and I think that Chester's challenge identifying the political philosophy of the NDC and also the NMP of late is unsurprising, because as you look across the Caribbean, there's really no significant difference between political parties in every island that you have. all of us are constrained by the realities of trying to get by in this world. So things like citizenship sales and so on, you would see in both political parties. That's one of the features of Grenada. Both political parties seem to be relatively comfortable with it. Taxation policies, generally, both of them are comfortable with it. There's a comfort with value-added tax, direct taxation, and so on. In places like Antigua, it differs somewhat. But by and large in Grenada, the two are the same. I think the fundamental difference right now, and I'm hoping that we will get to this later, is personalities. And the personalities are very different. I think the level of organization of the NNP has been significantly better over the years. It has been far more coherent. The disorganization in the NDC was profound. It seems to be getting its act together now. But the question is this something that can be sustained over time? So I would say that those are the differences. And this question of philosophy, even if we don't espouse a philosophy, we have one. And, if you look to the policies in a situation where your current Prime Minister, Dickon Mitchell, is relatively new to politics, and he would not have had the opportunity in a leisurely way to expose a philosophy over time, but certainly you can see it in some of the actions that he's taken politically, and you may think that it's a kind of a more nationalist agenda, but yeah, that's a philosophical outlook. Even though it's not articulated, you can certainly see in terms of some of the actions. But I think the key thing currently is that all of us, the climate change agenda, the role of the International Monetary Fund and other agencies like that, all of us are operating in an environment where our willingness to do certain things is constrained significantly by that. In the past, it was the reach of the Americans, and their unwillingness to embrace the left agenda. That's no longer of any significance now. But I think the challenge right now is, the economic ability to get by. What do you do? What do you sell? What economic activity do you engage to carry the economy forward? And fundamentally, we're all doing the same thing.
And if we are all doing the same thing, and I dare not say that we're being reactionaries, all of us, does it mean that our political parties are based on personalities more so than philosophies because of the constraints that Peter mentioned?
And that question is directed to me?
You can answer, but it's an open question.
Well, not quite. Simply because the environment in which we are operating is we are at a particular stage in the development of international capital, right? There have been shifts in that development in the sense that the world's productive capacity, both in terms of ordinary goods but as well as cutting-edge technology in the technological field, in the IT field, in the field of technology overall and science, has shifted significantly from the dominance of Western Europe and its offshoots. Those territories which they committed genocide and seized. So whether they be Australia, New Zealand, and those territories they established, well, they tried it in South Africa, and of course they were eventually rolled back. But we have to remember that the world is in that phase of development, and then the coming on board of China and the shift in the world's productive capacity from those hitherto sections of the old industrial revolutionary settings to the cutting-edge technology and so on, utilizing, of course, the massive capacity of China to produce. And we've seen how they have been in the shortest period of time of humankind and human civilization, how they have moved a country that was predominantly backward, agrarian, and poor beset with strife, divided by the European forces, the introduction of drugs in order to weaken the society, how all of that changed, and within 70 years, it is now the second largest economy in the world, on mark to overtake and become the largest economy in the world in every sphere of economic and scientific endeavor. So it is something for us to watch at very carefully. So the world is being reshaped by those forces.
Right.
And therefore it places limitations.
And what William is saying is entirely true. The world is being reshaped by those forces. But I don't know that the average voter in Grenada, in St. George's, is going to vote on that basis. The relationship that Grenada has with China has been reflected in the way that one former prime minister would have been able to use that relationship to give stuff to Grenadians. But the broad philosophical is very, very fascinating to listen to, but I think it appeals to me as a political analyst and a person who is schooled in political science and so on. But I don't think the average Grenadian voter, or the average Barbadian voter for that matter, could care less about that kind of stuff. Look, people went in the last election and they voted for Dicker Mitchell over Keith Mitchell. They voted because they thought that there was a youthful exuberance of Dicker Mitchell and a newness and a freshness and an excitement that they embraced, and they rejected the fact that Keith Mitchell. I think that when it comes down to it, that's what we really need to discuss. I don't think, and this is not an unusual thing in the Caribbean, where we have almost a king-centered or queen-centered politics, where people are excited in one way or the other. You look at the situation in Barbados. I'm sorry?
Let me ask you this, because I'm coming to you just on this point, because I wanted to get there. We have a situation in Grenada where there are two main political parties, and one may claim that NNP is struggling to define a clear succession plan. One may claim that NEC is accused of being non-functional. I'm talking about the party now, I'm not referring to government. Are these challenges common in the region, where the lack of succession planning, whether it's affected the party in power, you never really see it until they're in opposition, and a party who's makes up the government, they themselves are struggling to remain functioning?
Yeah. And that is the reality of the Westminster system. The Westminster system, as it operates in the Caribbean, in these small environments, are such that either you're in government or you are nobody. And I think that's the reason that the NDC has struggled for such a long time, because the NDC has not been able to remain in government for long enough to define itself. So you can't define yourself based on policies. You can't offer anyone anything because you had nothing to offer anyone. I mean, you can't even offer them senatorships, because that is nothing significant. And the reality is the opposition is lonely, is desolate, and the reality of the NDC has been that it has suffered in opposition for a very, very long time, and has been unable to define itself in that way. The fact that Keith Mitchell appeared to have control of the NNP and did so well as a leader, 24 hours later as opposition leader, and without that power, he's struggling. And I mean, 1 year later he's struggling, and 2 years later he's struggling still, because these issues are now manifesting themselves. And our Westminster system that we have inherited does not give opposition parties out of power the capacity to manage problems effectively and to deal with the internal realities. And all of these issues now come to the fore. So, of course, the NDC is doing well now because it's in government. And I think that it's being helped by the fact that the NNP is struggling.
Are you saying that there is no example
in that regard?
No, are you saying that there's no example that you can cite of a functioning opposition party and a functioning party whose leadership is in government? Are we saying that that's just the nature of the beast, is what my question?
In Grenada, in the case of Grenada, in the case of St. Lucia, it's been back and forth because there's been a regularity of alternation. The challenge with Grenada is that there hasn't been no regularity of alternation. You've had one party in power for all intents and purposes most of the time. So it has essentially starved the other one of oxygen. If you compare yourself with St. Vincent and the Grenadines, for example, where the NDP has been in opposition now for, it's going 25 years, the NDP is struggling in the same way because it lacks the ability to define itself. And then you look at policies, for example, and you say, okay, what's the difference between the two? There's no policy difference. There's no personality difference. And therein lies the challenge. So as I said, I find what William is saying about the philosophy is fascinating and so on and engaging. But I think when the rubber hits the road, it really is. Grenadians are going out and voting for one Mitchell over the other. And I think that right now the other is appearing to be more exciting to the vast majority of Grenadians. And whenever we get to that conversation today, what we really need to do is discuss, what do the two political parties look like in 2 years' time when another election comes? And I think that really will be the defining characteristic. Sorry to take the conversation in that direction.
I'm with you. And I would want you, as you respond, William, to also give an assessment of the state of the National Democratic Congress in your view.
All right, so I'm going to step back a little bit. I think the independence era for Grenada, and it might be applicable, of course, to similar sized countries in our region, that era has landed the citizenry in a situation where we live under a dictatorship of the political parties. The limitations of the political parties, by and large, become the limitations of the society. Meaning the limitations of the party, when they're in government, those limitations are visible there. And to the extent that the operators close systems, or virtually close systems, they are the limitations of the society. So the independence project is based on two fundamentals. One is development and the other is leadership. And in both cases, people expect and look towards the political parties to provide for those two things to happen. In our case, I think the political parties, as we have experienced them in Grenada, A, they have not had deep benches. B, they have not had any serious think tanks. So they could hardly be said to be institutions. Hardly. Some of them a little, perhaps a bit more than, but generally, they're all fledgling entities.
So if we just go specific now, if you were to take a look at the NDC, how would you assess that organization, that institution?
Well, today's NDC is a hybrid. You have, well, first of all, I don't know to what extent there's a resemblance between today's NDC and the very original NDC. I'm not so sure. Because by the time we came to 2022, there were some people in charge of the NDC who, in other words, the post-Tillman period, the post-Burke period, I do not believe that they were essentially very grounded in NDC thinking and NDC.
They didn't come from the belly of the party. That's a term being used these days.
And then in the 2020-21, the NDC, out of necessity, I believe, went outside of itself, and it had to do so because internally there was no viability. So they went outside and found themselves a leader, and he came with a small group of people. So it's a work in progress, I believe, for them to mend and these things, bring them together, these different, I wouldn't say perhaps factions, but
so
I don't know.
2 years on, or we'll be talking the end of 2021 to date, how has there been a bridging of the gaps, alignment of philosophy, and the movement towards the formation of an organization that one can define as a National Democratic Congress?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm searching for evidence. I don't know that there's any deliberate action on their part to build that kind of thing. I think people have become very busy running the affairs of state, and so the party as such has not, in my view, been demonstrating any evidence that it is growing, it is consolidating itself, it is establishing itself on an institutional footing and for the long run. They might come to that, but as of this time, I don't see the evidence.
Okay. I'm recognizing it's time for our first break, so we'll take our first break, and when I'm back, I'm preparing Chester. I'm going to ask him for his assessment of the NNP. We'll be right back.
Since it's nice, we're doing it twice. Clock out and clock into courts. November 29th. It's Black Friday Reloaded.
Looking to shop online from your favorite stores like Amazon and Shein? With GPC Global, it's never been easier. Get your very own US address and shop from around the world. With GPC Global, you can order the latest trends and must-have items, all delivered straight to Grenada to your closest post office for your pickup. We offer the cheapest rates, and our service is reliable and quick. No more waiting for weeks for your packages. Your satisfaction is guaranteed. Join the Grenada Postal family today and start shopping smarter. Visit us online at www.grenadapostal.com or call us on 437-POST. That's 437-7678. GPC Global, your gateway to the world.
Tourism is me. Tourism is you. Tourism is everybody, and tourism connects us all.
Did you know that tourism generates revenue and foreign exchange earnings?
Did you know it stimulates infrastructural development and facilitates cultural exchange among people?
You must know tourism is linked to all industries,
from agriculture to construction.
So support the industry today and be welcoming to all our visitors.
Tourism is my business. Tourism is your business. Tourism is our business. Listen, one and all. Tourism connects us all.
A message from the Ministry of Tourism
and the Grenada Tourism Authority.
Have you heard about the new Softweave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Softweave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Softweave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Are you looking for a reliable, affordable, and customer-friendly pharmacy? Look no further than Hills and Valley Pharmacy, the nation's leading healthcare products and services provider. We are committed to serving you at convenient locations. Find an extensive and affordable selection of prescription and over-the-counter drugs and medical supplies at Church Street, Hillsborough, Carriacou, Jubilee Street, Grenville, St. Andrew, near the bus terminal, and Halifax and Grenville Street, St. George. Our committed team is always available to offer valuable assistance for managing your health and wellness. Discover the additional benefits of our wholesale distribution on Halifax Street and our Medcare Center on Grenville Street, where we provide in-house physiotherapy, massage therapy, doctor consultations, and eye care services. Our commitment is to satisfy all your healthcare needs, including competitive prices, loyalty rewards, and special discounts for seniors. Contact us at 435-6904 and WhatsApp 535-4734. Choose Hills and Valley Pharmacy. Remember, your health is our business.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners, and thank you for continuing to be with us as we discuss Grenada's political climate. Just so I promised, so I'm keeping my promise. Your assessment of the state of the new National Party?
Well, the state of the new National Party is reflective, and it's a point I made many years ago, well, a few years ago, when it appeared that the National Democratic Congress was in this constant turmoil. It didn't have clear leadership. There was ups and downs and changes of different personalities, ins and outs, and so on. And people got the view that that was germane only to the National Democratic Congress. And I argued, no, it's not. What was happening inside of the National Democratic Congress is reflective of a deeper problem within Caribbean society and civilization as a whole. And that we can see that manifesting itself in many areas. The areas in which we excel, and all of a sudden there was a collapse. It now appears to be a collapse, right? Because the dialectics has reached a point now where the thing is changing rapidly. But it took time for us to get here. Cricket is an example, right? We have a lot of social, cultural issues that we are struggling with. The whole question of youth violence, the whole question of societal alienation of the young male, the whole question of the rise of criminality. I'm coming back. So I'm saying what you witness within the NNP is not unique to the NNP, but it is just part of the process of growth and the challenges thrown up when one confronts certain kinds of what I would describe as changes that must happen. How do you do it? How do you control it? What are the instruments and levers that are there to make sure that whatever transition is done in an orderly manner, it's done in a fair manner, it's done in a transparent manner, and most importantly, when you bring these three together, that it positions the organization to be able to move itself from the position in which it finds itself in opposition to a position once more where it now controls state power. And that's the challenge that the new National Party has.
How has it been managing that? And has the conversation over leadership or that succession plan distracted from the party's work in preparing for leadership?
Well, I think the public is as informed as myself about it. You can look, you can see what's happening. The current political leader made it abundantly clear that he was at the end of his political life, and he said so in almost every rally. He made it clear that he will not lead the new National Party into another election. At the time of swearing in as leader of the opposition, he said words to the effect that within 6 months, the party will move to a convention to choose somebody. Well, we are now 6 months later, and well, a date has now been set. But there are serious questions arising whether or not the process that is unfolding is fair, whether or not the process is in accordance with the basic fundamental rule that the party has, which is the Constitution. I think we are all aware that there has been an opinion floating around by no other than Dr. Lawrence Joseph, a guy with a PhD in the judicial sciences, if you want to call it that, who gave an opinion on the emergence of certain strange arrangements occurring inside there and how things, I mean, I'm saying it's an open secret, and it's out there in the public. People are talking about it.
Are you suggesting that the protracted discussions and wrestling over leadership for the party can be made akin to Biden staying in the race a little bit too long in the U.S. and hence hurting overall the NNP?
Well, I leave that for the political scientist and his conjecture and the science that he brings to bear to distill these questions scientifically. What I do know is that where a party fails to do a scientific analysis of why it lost power, then that party is really set on a course of major mistakes that would only result in its inability to take that power back. Okay. On the other side of the coin, if the party which won the election did not understand why it won, all right, then it will make major mistakes, because I want to plant here at the moment that the 2022 election, the people did not go to the poll to elect the National Democratic Congress. Right? And that's my view. I hold that view as a citizen. I believe that. I believe what happened there, that the 22 election was a negative election in which people left home not to vote for somebody, but the system allows somebody to emerge. But I think over 10,000 people. And when you check the numbers of those who voted in 2018, those who migrated from the NNP plus those who didn't vote in 2018, and you look at the numbers that the NDC got over 2018, the NDC got some 13,000 votes. And that was 13,000 votes, 10 of so thousand plus came from that large body that did not cast a vote in the 2018 election. The question therefore, scientifically, for the party that have lost power, it should have scientifically determined why that was the case.
Peter, your assessment of both organizations.
This is great. You know, William has identified the whole thing, and it's spot on in the analysis. I couldn't agree more. When you go to the doctor and you are basically diagnosed with cancer, the question is whether you want to hear that diagnosis or not. And you know, I have a friend, an older friend, who died recently of prostate cancer because he was not prepared to hear this diagnosis and the implications of it. And that's the reality. So I agree with William entirely. The NNP has a scientific analysis of why they lost the election. I know that for a fact, that they actually have such an analysis in their possession. The question is to whether or not anyone in the leadership has read it, A, and B, whether they are prepared to take action on those issues. And as you quite rightly said just now, it's not rocket science. Everybody in Grenada knows why they lost. So the question is, if you are not prepared to take the necessary actions to deal with that reality, you could as well not even bother, you know. So I agree. A party that loses needs to understand why it lost and needs to do an analysis. But generally speaking, political parties that lose don't do such an analysis unless they're ready to deal with the reality of why they lost. And case in point would be Prime Minister Motley, currently the Barbados Labour Party in 2018, which lost an election that they should have won. Same kind of scenario like Grenada, where people did not go out to vote for the Democratic Labour Party, but they stayed home and allowed the Democratic Labour Party to be re-elected because it was performing horribly. The Prime Minister wasn't inspiring, but people had concerns about Owen Arthur, who, like Keith Mitchell, had been around too long. He was a great Prime Minister, but he was at the wicket for too long. And people decided, look, the best way to deal with Arthur is just not stay at home. So we had record people remaining at home in 2013. And as a result, Prime Minister Stewart was re-elected. And it's exactly the scenario that you're describing now, where people then go to elect them, and then they woke up the next morning and say, goodness gracious, what have I done? But, you know, the interesting thing about what is happening in Grenada, as distinct from what would have happened in Barbados, is that I think that 2 years on, based on what people are seeing, they're convinced that the right thing happened. Because if this did not happen, we wouldn't be having this kind of conversation that we're having now. And I think that the resilience and the determination of Keith Mitchell to basically say, well, either I continue as leader or alternatively we mashing up the whole thing is manifesting itself. I think Grenadians are uncomfortable with that, and I think that they feel that Prime Minister Mitchell has been half decent in some instances, has been whole decent in many other instances in terms of his way that he's dealing with the issues in Grenada. Grenadians are no worse off than anyone else in the Caribbean, and against that background, I think that people probably figure, well, maybe the right thing happened. That's worrying, because if you want to get back into office, that approach will ensure that you will probably remain out of office, because I can tell you, in the last time they stayed home and elected the NDC, if they come out en masse and support the NDC in the next election, it's going to be a complete washout, and that is something that I think should worry the NDC. The point I was making earlier, though, was that when the Barbados Labour Party lost in 2013, because Arthur was marginalized almost immediately and Mia Motley took over, they were able to do an introspection which looked at the reason for the loss, which was obvious, it was Arthur. But they were able to do something else that was interesting. They were able to do something called a philosophical document. So the Barbados Labour Party has a document in its possession now, which it worked on through focus groups and research and whatnot, that says this is what we stand for. This is where we stand for. And they spent that 5 years working on this idea of what they stand for philosophically. And then after they had that document, they went to the people and they introduced themselves all over again. They said, this is a new party under new leadership. This is what we stand for. Give us an opportunity. And they went through every single constituency, rubbing shoulders with people, going to the beach, hanging out. And they were able to reintroduce themselves to the public of Barbados. And all the 30 Love was essentially the result of all of that. What I'm saying in the case of Grenada is that if the NNP were spending this time in opposition, doing that kind of a philosophical reassessment, why did we lose? Okay, what do we need to do differently? And what do we stand for as an institution? I would say that the time in opposition will be well spent, but what they're doing in opposition, they're spending time, and every single time I hear Keith Mitchell speaking, he is repeating the same thing over and over again. He's saying, when the time comes, I will go. And to me, honestly, I am becoming a bit concerned about the extent to which this story is being repeated over and over and over again. These speeches are predictable.
All right, so
and then you have the masses cheering and cheering, with excitement, and it's the same set of people that go to all of these meetings, all the constituencies, and they get excited and they cheer, oblivious to the fact that you have a situation where the rest of the country is not impressed, and the rest of the country is saying exactly what the two analysts are saying tonight. What is going on? What exactly is going on?
Let's go ahead, William.
Yeah. Well, this is good. This is good stuff. I think one of the things we must do is to reckon with the cultural reality of the NNP, its creation in the Mitchell cloth, and its standing today. So when we look at the new National Party, the one that lost in 22, and the one that has shown its inner belly since then, what you find is one man who is owner of party, and he is himself the brand. The NNP does not have a brand outside of Keith Mitchell. Keith is the brand.
Excellent.
He is the NNP. He's the brand, and he's the owner. And those factors, you take this thing, is going to take some doing and some time and some maturity for these things to work from those emotional and subjective situations to an understanding that, listen, there's a bigger picture here, resting ultimately with the best interests of Grenada. Now listen, the NNP had an event Saturday night to
celebrate the 40th anniversary.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Alan Chastanet from St. Lucia and Andrew Holness from Jamaica. Mm-hmm. And I heard a message in the stuff. By the way, those short speeches are useful, I think, for students of the politics and government to spend a little time, pondering upon. And one might sift a few things out of that. But there was a message in there that said something to NNP people. It says the message was you value this man, your leader. Value and maintain that value of this man. Then understand that there's going to be a transition. That transition requires that there be a relationship between that man and who is to come. Now, what are they saying? What are they saying? They're saying, listen, NNP, if you choose somebody who does not have a relationship, a happy one, with Keith Mitchell, this party that you belong to, those who are members and so on, those who support it, you're going to be on a slippery slope. So it's a very, 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 we're wrestling here with some mind issues alongside some very cultural factors that we can't ignore. And I think the NNP is giving us a classic case study of what this thing looks like and the implications.
Just if you can come in here, any takeaways from the 40th anniversary celebrations, whether it was the black tie dinner or the rally in Bush issue yesterday? Any high points, low points? Are we clearer in the way forward?
Unfortunately, because of some private personal circumstance, I have not been very much engaged. So neither of those events did I attend.
Okay.
So I'm not able to comment on the specifics of the event itself. But I am clear on the path forward for the party. I'm clear on the challenges that the party faces, and a lot will depend on how the party navigates those changes.
But any indication coming out of the weekend or leading up to, with the high-powered visitors, that we're looking forward to a smooth election and convention in 2 weeks' time?
Well, a lot will depend on, I see no reason why the convention ought not to be orderly. I mean, remember, the party is governed by a set of basic rules. These rules are there, they are written, right? And the rules set out a system of orderliness. Yes, and once those are followed, there ought not to be any problem. The party is founded on some basic democratic.
Do you anticipate the rules being followed?
Well, there are emerging questions on the basis of some events that seem to be unfolding that has, in effect, cause for some concern. I happen to be privy to a document which was done as an opinion by Dr. Lawrence Joseph, as I tell you, a man of jurisprudential, doctoral eminence. And he said in that document that certain measures that are being contemplated by the party is in fact unlawful and ultra vires the Constitution.
Let me ask you this. So there is an introduction of a screening committee that has been announced, and the membership of the screening committee has been announced.
Pronounced on that committee.
But was his opinion sought? Because we're talking about the actions
for him
now.
To have written, according to his own writings, his opinion was sought. I am not sure who sought the opinion.
Okay.
But an opinion was sought and an opinion was given.
Right.
And no one can reasonably question the capacity of Dr. Joseph on a subject matter like that. He has had a very long association. In fact, he claims in the very document that he wrote the first draft of the party's constitution. All right, so it puts him in a significant way to make a pronouncement on what he sees as being correct and what he sees as being wrong.
Go ahead.
One can only hope that the party is wise enough to understand that, because you see, there are two battles that must be fought. One is how the battle of succession, if there is, and there's nothing wrong with a contest, There's absolutely nothing wrong with a contest. The question is how that contest is managed. What instruments are there to ensure that you have a healthy contest? Okay. There's nothing wrong in a contest.
Okay, and the second?
And the second battle is having move beyond that contest. Depending on how you engage in that contest will position you and see where you are on the track to the second battle, because the second battle now is a direct contest for state power.
Okay. William, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, you see, that is the thing, that classic tension between these issues. The cultural stuff, a man who's owner and is the brand, and something that's written that's called the Constitution of the party. And we all know as we speak, and we've always known it, that political parties are hardly democratic institutions. They are hardly democratic institutions.
Well, listen, the Constitution said there should be annual conventions.
They could say,
they have not been conventions.
Yeah, and what's going to be a consequence because somebody going to go and suffer a consequence because there hasn't been a convention? So we have to be very realistic and so on when we discuss these things and face them. Dr. Joseph has opined as he has. I presume that somebody could go and get somebody else to issue a contrary opinion on the very same issue. But we fight with whatever tools are available to us. So I am not arguing against that. I'm only saying that we ought to face it for what it is. The NNP, like the NDC and the whoever else are not democratic institutions. And we must recognize the cultural overlay, and in the case of the NNP, what it means when the leader of the party is owner and he's the brand itself. Mm-hmm. Because the thing doesn't end with that say-so. If you're thinking of the longevity of the NNP, or something called the NNP, then you have to reckon with how you preserve or whether or not you preserve something today. That's what Wholeness and Chastity were talking about.
Peter, any impressions on the visitors?
Lots of impressions. I've been making notes, and it sounds like the members of the panel have come around to my whole idea that it's really all about the leader, and it's the leader center parties, both of them fundamentally, and yeah, I mean democracy is less relevant in this regard, and I think that the Joseph opinion is very profound, and I think there are a lot of people in Grenada that would agree with it. But in the same way that Chester was saying that we need to have a scientific analysis of why they lost, and I'm saying that is irrelevant unless you're willing to entertain it. The legal opinion is irrelevant unless it is being entertained by the persons that make the decisions within the NDC. Because like the NNP, it is not the NNP, like the NDC, it's not really a democratic institution. It's really about efficacy and how that works and whatnot. William was making a point about the relationship with the person coming in, and I was curious to ask him who exactly he thinks that Keith Mitchell will have a good relationship with coming in. And I'll tell you a short story. You can do a YouTube search and you can hear some of the most horrible things that Oyenatha said about Prime Minister Mia Mottley, who has now emerged as one of the most successful leaders in the region in terms of her ability to win all the seats twice, and the impression she's made on the international stage. But if you listen to Oyenatha 2 years before he died, indeed, if you listen to Oyenatha 1 year before he died, one would believe that she was a despotic individual. She was entirely unsuited for office, and some of the most uncharitable things. Clearly, he was not talking about the same person as our Prime Minister today. I think the same problem is emerging in relation between the relationship between Dr. Mitchell and Peter David. I mean, let's just cut to the chase. That's really what it's about. I believe that Dr. Mitchell sees in Peter David a real challenge. He sees in him someone who he believes can challenge him. And who has a national popularity that could perhaps succeed him, and he's not ready to go. So he's doing exactly what Denzel Douglas did, what Owen Arthur did, what several other leaders across the Caribbean, Lester Bird, did it to Gaston Brown. You know, you villainize the person that appears to be the most likely one to take over, so that you frustrate the idea of a relationship, and then you say to people like William, look, this thing will only work if I have a good relationship with the person coming after me. This is not the person, so it needs to be someone else. And I tell you, if tomorrow someone else emerged, and the good lady is also in the race as well, and it appears as though she has a good chance of winning, there will be good reasons why she shouldn't lead either. And I can assure you that it will not take long to formulate reasons why she is not a good alternative. The problem is that all of the guns are blazing now and trained on one person because he appears to be the person that will emerge, but that will change overnight. And the idea of alternatives that are younger and more exuberant, there's this lady in England, and you know, all of that is simply because those persons don't appear to be likely. But you change that reality tomorrow. And I've seen it, as I said, I've seen it in St. Kitts. I've seen it in Barbados, where in Barbados there were 3 options that emerged as alternatives to Owen Arthur. And in each case, all of those options were determined to be highly unsuitable for reasons other than. And that is where we are now. But, you know, Terence Drew is Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis today.
Thank you very much. It's time for a final break. So let's take a break, and then we'll come back with the discussions. Viewers, we'll be right back.
Mobility, a common theme woven into the very fabric of human history. From ancient wanderers to modern explorers, our instinct to move, to seek something greater, and to grow has always driven us forward. Imagine a journey into pathways of boundless opportunities and endless possibilities. A collective future where the vibrant rhythms of the Caribbean, rich culture, and welcoming community create unforgettable experiences. Beyond citizenship by investment, we believe in our collective investment of time, resources, and energy that fosters innovation, creates jobs, and enriches lives, driving the growth of an entire nation. The Investment Migration Agency Grenada boasts over a decade of exceptional service and remains committed to guiding you toward global mobility and economic freedom through investment. Your journey becomes our shared story of progress and prosperity. This is an invitation to be part of something greater, something enduring. Begin your journey at imagrenada.gd. IMA Grenada. Unlock the possibilities.
Christmas is here, and this year Real Value IGA Supermarket is bringing you a season of savings. From tasty hams, favorite fruits, and even bacon ingredients, we have everything you need to make this Christmas special without breaking the bank. Enjoy massive discounts on all your favorite items starting December 1st. Get the best deals on all your holiday favorites only at Real Value IGA Supermarket. But wait, that's not all. This year Real Value IGA Supermarket is spreading holiday more cheer. Our loyal frequent shoppers will get a chance to win $500 in groceries every week until Christmas. Imagine what $500 in groceries can do for you this Christmas. More savings, more celebration, and more of everything you love. At Real Value IGA Supermarket, let's make your Christmas even brighter. This Christmas, come experience the joy of saving while you celebrate. The season of saving is upon us at Real Value IGA Supermarket, your go-to supermarket for everything Christmas.
Where are you come out? Where are you from?
Spend $50 or more at any Hubbard's department or participating outlets for a chance to win free fuel, free drinks, free prizes, free property and vehicular insurance, free Hub TV and internet, free electricity, free coke, free water, free cooking gas, free paint supplies, free Dutch Lady milk, free passes to Sunshine promotion events for 2024, free groceries, all for one whole year, and every winner receives a free lunch package. But that's not all. Drive away in style in a brand new Isuzu D-Max. It sips, it doesn't guzzle. So fill out your entries and place them into the marked entry boxes. This promotion is brought to you in part by Dutch Lady, Danny, Promo, Supreme Bleach, Creative Chef, Grenlac, Floor, Salt Petroleum, Grenadian General Insurance Company Limited, Coca-Cola, Sunshine Promotion, Caribouries, Coop Bag, Sesame Spain, and Food Fear. Promotion runs from April 2nd to December 24. Terms and conditions apply.
Christmas is all about the moments we share, the smiles, the laughter, and the love that fills our homes. This season, let your walls reflect the warmth of family time. Sisson's Paint, match with every shade of togetherness. Celebrate 12 weeks of Christmas with Sissons. Buy one, get one 30% off on selected items. And with every purchase of any Sissons Paint, you get a chance to win US $100 every week for 12 weeks from October 1st to December 22nd. Terms and conditions apply. Available at all Sissons hardware dealers nationwide. Sissons, internationally tested, brilliantly affordable.
Win big in the ACB season of joy and rewards.
Oh, joy, joy, joy and rewards. It's the season to enter and win what's yours. Have your loan payments wiped away for a year. Bringing the joy of Christmas to you. We know that you're ready for the holidays with the $500 weekly giveaway. Oh, joy, joy, joy and rewards. With ACB season of joy and rewards. For the weeks leading up until Christmas. Take a loan into now and win with us. Oh, joy, joy, joy and rewards. With ACB season of joy and rewards.
Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. We're discussing the political climate here in Grenada. Just before we left off, I know you wanted to just make a point on the state, certainly on the handing over of leadership or the succession plan, or who will emerge?
Well, as I said to you before, if a party is serious, it has got to do a thorough scientific analysis of why it lost.
No, but we passed that stage.
No, we passed that
December
stage.
15th.
So we have December 15th.
Correct.
So, and as I said to you before, that is one battle. The war is yet to come, and depending on how that battle unfolds. In other words, if the transition, because we are in a phase of intergenerational change. Mm-hmm. What worked for the generation which gave rise to Dr. Mitchell and his successful politics and his contributions he made to the overall development of Grenada? He may not have agreed with all his policies, but he has done. There's no question about that, especially in the area of youth and sport and development. In that field, he's made a tremendous contribution. I think he would stand out as one politician in that area, right? But like everything else, there's time. There's time.
Would you say that
much depends.
The time and the youthfulness of our nation may be the option?
Precisely the point.
But maybe the option should not be Peter David either.
Because the intergenerational changes. In fact, We were assigned to do an analysis in 2021, and that analysis was done by a committee of which I was a part. I'm not at liberty to say what the findings were because that would be unethical. But what I can say is, had the party followed that analysis, the party would be in office today. And the question is, once you are given a job, you have to assess the tools you have. You may not have the ideal tool, but the best tools available to do the job. Right? And the challenge is that you may have a tool that for some limited reason you don't like, but the question is that tool capable of...
William, do you believe Peter David should subject his candidacy to the steering committee ahead of, or the search committee, I think is the name, screening committee, ahead of the convention? Well, if you are to advise.
That is what they've agreed on as party, then they all, Peter and whoever else, follow that. The NDC had a such thing, in 2021. There were a number of names and so on and so on. The only difference between the two is that the NDC found itself having to go outside, and the NNP is in fact looking inside.
Okay. We do have a first caller online. Good evening, caller, and welcome.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Go ahead?
Yes?
Hello?
Listen through the telephone and go ahead, please.
Good night. I'm not hearing anybody answering.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead, please.
Okay. Good night to the host and to the gentlemen. Very nice conversation, somewhat very high-powered discussion there. But I just hope that the politicians are, take heed of what is being said, because to me things is not going as is expected. And if it's not going as is expected, the advice that the minister from Jamaica gave and from St. Lucia, if it's fallen deaf ears, we won't get anywhere. We won't get anywhere, because when we check what is being said there, it appears that the fight is a tough fight. It seems as if there are a lot of manipulation in it, and I think it wouldn't do well for the future of the NNP party.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear caller. Peter, same question as I asked William. Do you believe Peter David should subject his candidacy to the screening committee despite the opinion by Dr. Joseph? You're muted, I believe.
Yeah, I was a bit animated earlier, so I muted myself so I wouldn't interrupt the conversation by the two distinguished gentlemen. My advice to both Peter David and Emlyn Pierre, because I think those are the two people who have thrown their hat in the ring, is if Keith Mitchell offers himself to be a candidate, they should step out. I do not think it makes sense challenging him, because you're going to lose. So far best for me to talk about submitting yourself to a committee. I think that's entirely out of the question. But I think the idea of playing a part in a process which is clearly not designed to give some kind of authentic reading of the reality, it's best not to go out. So if Peter David and Emlyn Pierre are listening, my advice to you is that if Keith Mitchell decides that he wants to continue as leader and he's throwing his hat in the ring, then it's not for you. It's as simple as that. The NDC and NP has to come to a point where it is ready to say we are going to take meaningful decisions and we're going to look seriously at the leadership, the issue of change. It's not about whether you prefer David or Pierre. It's not about that. I think it is about whether you think the time has come for Dr. Mitchell to go on. I mean, what Chester said was excellent. I mean, he's been an outstanding leader, not only nationally, but regionally. Very little comparison in terms of the excellence of Dr. Mitchell. But in the final analysis, the time time has come. So that would be my thing. I don't even think you should entertain this idea of a committee. My thing is, if it is a situation where Dr. Mitchell wants to continue and he is going to throw his hat in the ring, I think that both of the two persons should opt out and essentially just give him the opportunity to continue as leader.
Okay, we have another caller in line. Let's take the caller and come back.
We are going to take meaningful decisions.
Go ahead, caller, please listen through your telephone.
The issue of change. It's not about whether you prefer David up here. It's not about that. I think it is about
that caller is not yet ready for us. You had a response.
No, I was saying to Peter, whether or not he is given consideration as to whether or not the purpose of any political organization is to procure state power. And in the current context in Grenada, the question is, who is best positioned to be able to procure that state power? That's the question. And if one, and this is why I say a scientific analysis, if done, would help you to answer that question. Because then the doctor will be able to determine that it's not appendicitis you have, but you have a cancerous growth on your kidney.
Mm-hmm. And, do you believe
but just so you know that the scientific analysis has been done, and you know the question as to who is the better person is one that can easily be answered. I believe you can answer it yourself. You know, but the thing is that we can't get to that conversation until we decide whether or not it's time to move on.
You are the professionally
gentlemen. Hold on a second. We do have a caller on line, so let's give the caller an opportunity. Good evening, caller. Welcome. Caller, go ahead, please. Okay, so the caller is not here with us. Gentlemen, do you believe that Dr. Mitchell will be up for election as political leader on December 15th?
Wait, the question is
I'm asking each of you, so yes or no?
Well, I see certain signs which create a great degree of discomfort.
And discomfort in that he'll be a candidate or he will not be a candidate?
I am not seeing a sufficiency of signs to say he would not be a candidate.
William?
Right? Although there may be variations in how that candidacy occurs. Right. Because you can have real generals.
Or you can have a proxy?
Or you can have a proxy general. So it depends. It depends.
Okay.
But
William, your thought?
But the fact of the matter is, going on the basis of what was declared by Dr. Mitchell himself.
Right. That's past, Chess, and that's where I'm going. Right. That's past. The question is, on December 15, what do we anticipate? William?
The short answer is very likely.
Very likely. Okay. All right.
I agree. I agree.
And you likewise would agree. Yeah. And
but what
he's agreeing that very likely we'll see a Dr. Mitchell as candidate for leader on December 15th.
Okay.
All right. And should there be, I know Peter already weighed in that he believes everyone else should back off. Do you believe that whether it's Peter David, Eminem Pear, Dwight Hosford should also offer themselves as candidate given the situation that we're seeing?
Well, as I said, there's an open democratic process.
So you believe
the fundamental is, well, it's up to the individual, because the Constitution allows that to happen.
Right.
And I believe it serves the party better to have an orderly contest in which whoever emerges, emerges.
Okay. We have another caller. Let's try for that caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening. What I want to say, Chester, you all are grasshoppers. And you jump all about. And tell the other guy that's saying about leave Dr. Mitchell there. Remember when he wanted to go up about Uncle Blaze? He went up to open up the thing. And don't forget, it's December when he said that the man had money he could pay, so he paid, they coming now. And he tell him, what did he tell him? What goes around comes around. The worst kick to get is from a dying heart, so it's time coming. So let me deal with it now.
All right. Thank you. I think the callers likewise saying it should be opened up and there should be a contest.
You know, we can, you know, there's no harm in saying that. The thing is that if there's a specific contest, if there's a particular contest between Keith and Peter, then, you know, then we can, you know, we can have that conversation. But the thing is that if there's a specific contest, if there's a particular contest between Keith and Peter, then, you know, then we can, you know, we can have that conversation. But the thing is that if there's a specific contest between Keith and Peter, then you have a problem as NNP thereafter.
I don't think it's necessarily so.
Yeah.
It all depends on how the process is managed. But if there is a fair process, whoever emerges will have a good opportunity of pulling all sides together. It has happened before.
Yeah, I think
Chester, the question then I would ask you is, how do you think that the process, based on the evidence that you have seen, do you think that the process can ever be fair in a situation where you have a convention that's a year late, and that's no problem? You have a committee that is being established, which the lawyers say is not a jurisprudential guru has indicated is not legal, but yet still you're convinced that there's going to be a fair process. And I'm saying to you that what you will probably have is an election in which, two people go up with good intentions, they're beaten soundly, and they come away with the impression that the NDC has determined that the issue is settled, and Keith Mitchell remains leader, or alternatively a proxy, as the case may be. To me, it doesn't make sense to legitimize that process. And you're saying if it's a fair process, and I agree. No, I'm not. But what evidence do you have that it can be fair?
There ought to be a fair process.
But the question is, do you believe from
but there ought to have been a convention a year ago.
Is it?
Well, I have some concerns. I have concerns because the question arises: who sets up the committee? What would be this screening committee criteria that is going to use to determine who is fit and who is not fit? How does a committee arrive at a decision? Is the decision appealable? The Constitution allows for an open nomination, and Dr. Joseph quotes all of this and establishes the precedent for it.
Forgive me, I have to go to the phone one more time. Good evening, caller. Welcome. Good evening, caller. All right. So the challenge is in terms of certainly the legality of the committee, one, and two, there hasn't been any communication as to the power and the process of said committee.
To the best of my knowledge, now I could be wrong. As I told you, I have not been fully engaged because of some personal issues.
Right. Okay.
Right. But as far as I'm aware, there are a lot of significant unanswered questions. How was this committee appointed? Is the committee independent? What would be the criteria used to determine who is going to mark the paper?
But wouldn't you expect 2 weeks away from convention, when people's names ought to go to the floor, then we should have had this information?
In the party's constitution, there is no closing nomination day, as some constitutions have a date by which nominations must come. In the NNP's constitution, a copy of which I have with me, and which I have studied in great detail, and I'm very familiar with it, I have the copy of it here. It allows for an original, the amended edition of it, which I have. It allows for nominations on the floor on the day of the convention. There's never been a practice of a pre-nomination prior to the day of the convention. I mean, people can put up slates, but a slate is nothing, is just like a miniature political party. That's essentially what a slate is. That we run as a group. We don't split our votes. I know if William is going for the presidency, well, I will support William. And whatever votes I have, I'll give it to William, because in return, I'm going for general secretary. So the slate issue is not undemocratic. What is undemocratic is to set up a committee that nobody knows quite how independent that is, and then that committee makes a determination on who is qualified to stand for office.
Let's go a final try for a caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome. And we lost that caller. That was our final attempt. I'm sorry. William, if we just change, because we're looking at the political climate and we're looking at both political parties. I believe the NDC won the PR campaign leading up to the last elections. And it seems that the NDC, I'm referring to the party now, has gone silent. What has caused this? Why no PR?
Yeah. Well, you see, we live in a period where the model, the strict party model of office holders. A fellow is a PRO of a party. He may not necessarily possess a bundle of skills to do the PR work that the party needs to get done. And if that is the situation, then you're going to live with a deficit.
But there are other functions of the party.
Yeah.
Say voter registration, fundraising.
Those things can go on.
Let me just say this. Political parties in the model of the government that we have are there primarily and exclusively for one reason, and that is to procure political power. Once that is procured, the party is then folded up, put in its wrappings, and put on the shelf until the next process. It has no rules.
So a political party gets mothballs?
Yes, it goes into mothball, it's preserved until the next round, because it is exclusively, and that's how it is seen, and that was the difference between the NJM as a political organization and these traditional social democratic parties of varying degrees. The party has no role, right, in when it comes to the execution or the governance of the state. The party has absolutely no role.
And should there have been a policy document that the people moving from the party into the executive branch would have been playing from?
You have that. Then you have a situation in which the party pulls together people who can win an election. And the model is, it's somewhat like a beauty contest. So you are presented on the basis of your statistics, the size of your bust, the size of your waist, the size of, now I understand that your bottom is an important feature now of beauty. So they make assessments on these size and people get elected. The people who are elected, in most instances, have absolutely no skill in managing anything, right? But simply because they have been elected, right, they are then put to administer the state.
But it ain't no difference from fellas who were in the NGM and had nothing and so on, but you pull some gun and you get a thing, and all kind of fellas in the NGM held offices and so on, they didn't have skills either.
William, don't go there.
No, it's true.
No,
it's very true. I didn't say everybody.
Let us,
I'm not saying everybody.
Allow us to keep focused, because what I'm hearing is that, no, I'm not going to have a rebuttal on the NGM, but what I'm hearing is that maybe we ought to be mature enough, recognizing that while one might be capable of winning a seat, that doesn't mean that he ought to be or she ought to be the minister of anything.
Precisely the point. Precisely the point. So the system is created in which the political party, once it procures power, and that power is concentrated in the hands of a narrow executive, right? The political party goes into hibernation until the bell for the next election is rung when it comes out to procure that power.
So you see, that is so. But in the NGM example, what you found, there was NGM and there was PRG. And they took some decisions at the level of the NGM, the party, that collapsed the government, the PRG. So, one is buoyant, or dormant, not buoyant, dormant, when the party is in office. That is the Westminster model. And on the NGM model, you have the NGM party, very, very active and so on. The PRG is doing this work. The party meets and decides what it decided, and it broke the government.
All right, it's almost time for us to wrap. And Peter, I just want to start with you. And I'm going to ask you to give, each of you, give some advice to both political parties. So if you have all the members of the NNP viewing and all the members of the NDC, and what will be Peter Wickham's advice to them?
I'm honored. Gentlemen, I enjoyed the conversation. I think I learned a lot from the two my two senior colleagues on the panel, and their perspective was certainly very enlightening. So thanks for including me and for giving me the opportunity to learn a bit. The question of the public relations of the current government, the NDC, and I agree with a lot of what Chester was saying. Political parties are really about winning elections, and after that, there's really no role for them of any significance, to be honest. And the fact is that there's no infrastructure to allow them to do anything else. So the fact that we're not hearing anything from the NDC is consistent with the fact there's nothing for the NDC to say. At the political level, I am seeing the NDC that is essentially poking singles, the occasional four, but there's really not a whole lot to talk about. But the NDC is being maintained in office ultimately because the alternative looks a lot worse. And my thing is that Prime Minister Mitchell should essentially continue doing exactly what you're doing. You continue to do your poking, your twos, and essentially let the NDC NNP destroy itself, because ultimately you will be the beneficiary. So you're doing well, and just continue doing what you're doing. As far as the NNP is concerned, I think the NNP needs to get its house in order. I think it needs to take the advice of Chester Humphrey, that it needs to do scientific analysis. It has one, pick it up and read it. It needs to follow the advice. I think they need to have a transparent and democratic internal election and give the opportunity for all ideas to contend, whether it be Emily Pierre or Peter David or whosoever has an interest in coming forward, needs to be given the opportunity to come forward, to campaign freely, and ultimately let the party determine what is best for them going forward. I do feel that the party and the legacy of Dr. Mitchell right now is being severely threatened by this exercise. And I think that a successfully held democratic election in which the party chooses an alternative that they can rally behind is the best thing now for the NDC. So that's it. And again, thanks for including me on the panel. And I look forward to a conversation post-convention.
Absolutely.
Everybody's I went first, so I think William should have the distinction of going last.
So you go ahead.
And I'll be very brief. Actually, Peter spoke for me. Peter spoke for me, so there's no need for me to really.
Okay. So you adopt Peter's advice.
I'm in complete congruence with Peter's view on this question, because as I said to you before, there are two battles to be fought. And depending on how those battles fought will determine the outcome of the war. The first battle, and sorry I'm using military terms, but in politics that's how you associate. If the party was to flounder by using undemocratic means to resolve the transitional leadership issue, it will not be in a position to successfully recapture state power, so that the party will spend another 5 years. I think it was Peter who said some time ago that he's not sure whether or not the NNP must go through 10 years of being out of office to realize that this whole question of the nature and character of the transition of leadership in a changing time and how it should be done, that is important and should be done. I have difficulty with a view of the personal ownership of a political party. I find that fundamentally to be obscene, because the success of the leader is not the leader alone. Hundreds of feet are on the ground doing the work of the political party. So this concept that a party is the personal, I find it to be an abhorrent concept. And until leaders can get to the point, and let me say this is not the exclusive preserve of the social democratic parties. Even those who profess to be progressives are also showing some of that tendency that this thing is mine. Right? Life don't work that way. There is a time and place. The sun comes up at a particular time and it sets at a particular time. And the strength of a leader is to determine when that sun has set and to ensure the role of the leader then becomes one of ensuring that whatever is done orderly. As I said, is a basic fundamental instrument by which all of us are covenanted as party members, right? And we should treat it. And I'm saying this out of my long historic experience for the benefit of this country, right? And if we choose, even under the pretense of democracy, to go otherwise, we are not serving the interests of Grenada, because the new National Party has a significant role to play in the transformation of this country. Right? That role didn't come to an end on the 22nd, 2022. Right? It was changed out because the people decided that the time has come for the change. Now, if by stealth or otherwise you decide, well, I will defy the view of the people. No. We all must remember in politics, there's always a core. There's always a core of militants. There's always a core that no matter what is done, that core is there. Whether you're right or you're wrong, you're right. That can't win you in the current context of Grenada. That is insufficient to win you. And for the amount of work that the NNP has successfully done in creating educational opportunity spaces for working people, we should not be in this position.
Okay.
Right?
Let's get your closing comments, Willie.
Right. Thank you so much. Well, on the one hand, we are talking about the politics of a government. In the case of the NDC, not so much the party, the politics of the government. I have said elsewhere that I believe that the NDC as a government needs in its politics to abandon some of this old-fashioned political thinking and come to the fore with some more modern and refreshing political thinking. I would like to see them do that. I would like to see them turn the page on this loyalty question. This thing is very simple. Loyalty can take us distance, it can't take us X plus Y. So we need to open up that box some more. In the case of the NNP, I had longed for the day, perhaps I still have, to see the NNP emerge with a new look. In other words, a rebranded NNP, because I do not believe that this poor and vulnerable thing is still valid in the period in which we live, given the demographic changes in the society and this expansion in the middle class, which is to be credited to the NNP. This explosion in education in Grenada and the fact that we have, so we have to move with the times. We must know the times and we must know what is good for Grenada. The leadership issue is at the very heart of that thing. If you don't get it right, or if you contaminate it with views regarding ownership, regarding whatever it is, what are the consequences going to be? A, there are going to be immediate consequences for the party, and B, there are going to be consequences for Grenada. So if the mission is to form, he uses state power, and I understand that. In other jargon, the mission is to form the government of Grenada by lawful means, right? And if that is your mission, then you have to understand that there's a nexus between party leader and national leader. So you ought not to just narrow your thing on party leader. Well, we get a leader for we party without some form of appreciation that, listen, this leader that we get for party has some viability at the national level to become, you see. So the other thing is, and then I'll close it out, is that the Prime Minister is a creature of the Constitution. The leader of the Grenadian people, a nation, is a cultural issue. The people bestow that thing on a man or a woman because of their conduct, their reputation in delivering public service for the benefit of all the citizens, in moving the nation forward, in inspiring the people, in uniting the people. And we say that's our leader. So anybody could be, Herbert Blaise was Prime Minister, he was not leader. Yeah? Ben Jones was Prime Minister, he was not leader. So we have to understand it that way. And I think, listen, we are one people. The same things that occur to people who support the NDC in Grenada, those very things occur to people who support the NNP. We all cut from the same cloth. So I think we just need to give ourselves an opportunity to open up the mind some more and consider what is possible, not in the limited interest of the party, although that is the first cut, but also what is beneficial, what is good for Grenada under the auspices of your political party.
So you're like Chester in saying there are two battles, one December 15th, but the real war has to be won, and it starts on December 15th with a sound decision.
Well, you see.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. William Joseph, Chester Humphrey, and Peter Wickham online. Certainly appreciated the conversation. It was thoroughly enjoyable. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us for yet another Monday evening. I must confess, an extended Monday evening, but you saw how the discussions were going. Thank you. God bless. And I look forward to being with you again in another 6 days, 22 hours, and will be 15 minutes. Until next time.
Okay, take care.